The snow fell in thick, silent curtains over Brooklyn, transforming the grimy streets into something almost beautiful. Christmas Eve had arrived with the kind of cold that bit through layers of clothing and settled deep in the bones. The city lights reflected off the fresh powder, creating halos of gold and red that should have felt magical, but instead felt distant, untouchable, like watching joy through a frosted window you couldn't open. Vincent Romano sat in the back of his black Cadillac, watching those lights blur past as his driver navigated the slick streets. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped in his lap with the kind of controlled tension that came from years of maintaining composure when everything inside wanted to shatter. In the seats beside him, his 6-year-old twins, Sophia and Marco, sat in restless silence, the kind that preceded a storm. "I don't want to go to a restaurant," Marco muttered, his small arms crossed over his chest, his dark eyes, so much like his mother's, fixed stubbornly on the window. "I want to go home." "We're going to eat," Vincent said, his voice flat, brooking no argument. It was the same tone he used in business meetings, the one that made grown men reconsider their positions. But 6-year-olds, he was learning, were immune to intimidation tactics. "I'm not hungry," Sophia whispered, her voice small and broken. She clutched a stuffed rabbit to her chest, the last gift her mother had given her before the accident. The toy was worn now, loved to the point of threadbare patches, but Sophia refused to be separated from it. Vincent closed his eyes briefly, fighting the familiar ache that lived permanently in his chest these days. 8 months. It had been 8 months since Maria's car had spun out on black ice, since the phone call that had brought him to his knees in a way no bullet or betrayal ever had. 8 months of trying to be both father and mother, of fumbling through bedtime routines and school pickups, of watching his children fade a little more each day despite everything he did to hold them together. He was Vincent Romano. He controlled territory from Red Hook to Bensonhurst. Men feared his name. He'd built an empire through calculated decisions and unwavering strength, but he couldn't fix this. He couldn't fix the holes in his children's hearts, and he couldn't fix the gaping wound in his own. "We're eating out tonight," he said finally, forcing a softness into his voice that felt foreign on his tongue. "It's Christmas Eve. Your mother would have wanted—" "Don't talk about Mama," Marco's voice cracked, tears suddenly streaming down his round cheeks. "You don't know what Mama wanted! Mama's gone!" The words hit Vincent like physical blows. His driver, Tommy, glanced in the rearview mirror with poorly concealed concern, but said nothing. What could anyone say? Sophia began crying too, quiet sobs that shook her small shoulders. Vincent reached out, tried to pull her close, but she stiffened against his touch. That hurt most of all, his own children flinching from his comfort because he'd never learned how to give it properly. Maria had been the warm one, the one who knew how to soothe and heal. Vincent had been the provider, the protector, the one who worked late and came home to sleeping children more often than not. Now he was all they had, and he was failing them. "Here, boss," Tommy said quietly, pulling up to the curb outside Rosie's diner. It was a modest place, the kind of family establishment that had been serving the neighborhood for 30 years. Vinyl booths, checkered floors, the smell of coffee and home cooking. Vincent had chosen it specifically because it was normal, unremarkable, the kind of place Maria might have taken them. Not one of the upscale restaurants where his associates conducted business, where everyone knew his name and watched his every move. Tonight, he just wanted to be a father trying to feed his children dinner. They entered the diner, and the little bell above the door chimed cheerfully, announcing their arrival. The warmth hit them immediately, along with the scent of roasting turkey and fresh-baked pie. Christmas music played softly from speakers, Bing Crosby crooning about white Christmases. Garland draped across the windows, red and green lights twinkled, and a small artificial tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments that looked like they'd been crafted by local children. The diner was moderately busy, families clustered in booths, an elderly couple sharing dessert, a few solo diners at the counter. The moment Vincent walked in with the twins, several heads turned. Recognition flickered across some faces, followed quickly by wariness. Vincent was used to that reaction. He'd stopped caring about it years ago. A waitress behind the counter, an older woman with steel gray hair, glanced at them and then looked away quickly, suddenly very interested in wiping down the coffee station. "Table for 3, Vincent said to no one in particular. After a moment's hesitation, a young server, probably no more than 19, with nervous eyes, gestured toward a booth in the back. "This way, please." They settled into the booth, Vincent on one side, the twins squeezed together on the other. Marco immediately slumped down in his seat, his face set in a stubborn scowl. Sophia clutched her rabbit and stared at the table, her eyes red-rimmed and distant. The young server placed menus in front of them with shaking hands. Vincent noticed but said nothing. Let them be afraid. It made things simpler sometimes. Can I get you started with drinks? The server asked, his voice cracking slightly. 2 chocolate milks for them. Coffee for me. Black. The server nodded quickly and retreated. Vincent opened the menu, scanning the options. Comfort food, meatloaf, roasted chicken, mac and cheese. The kind of simple, honest cooking that Maria had loved. What do you want to eat? He asked the twins. Silence. Sophia? Marco? Look at the menu. I'm not hungry, Marco repeated, his voice defiant. You need to eat. No. Vincent felt his patience fraying. He'd negotiated territorial disputes and multi-million-dollar deals, but getting a 6-year-old to eat dinner was apparently beyond his capabilities. Marco, I'm not asking. Pick something. I said I'm not hungry. Marco's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables. Several diners turned to look, their expressions ranging from sympathy to disapproval. Sophia started crying again, quiet but persistent tears rolling down her cheeks. She pressed her face against the stuffed rabbit, her small body trembling. Vincent felt the familiar helplessness rising in his chest, mixing with frustration and grief into something nearly unbearable. He reached across the table, trying to touch Sophia's hand in comfort, but she pulled away. Sweetheart, please. I want Mama, Sophia whispered, her voice breaking. I want Mama. The words gutted him. Vincent's hands clenched into fists on the table, his jaw working as he fought to maintain control. Around them, the diner's cheerful atmosphere felt like a mockery. Families laughing, children excited about Christmas morning, couples holding hands across tables. All of it was a reminder of what they'd lost, what they'd never have again. The young server returned with drinks, setting them down with trembling hands before hurrying away without taking their food order. Vincent couldn't blame him. The kid probably thought Vincent was going to lose his temper, maybe cause a scene. The reputation preceded him everywhere. But Vincent wasn't angry. He was just broken, and he had no idea how to fix it. Please try to drink the milkshake, he said quietly, pushing the glasses toward the twins. Just try. Marco shoved his glass away, and it tipped, chocolate milk spilling across the table in a spreading puddle. Several people gasped. The young server rushed over with towels, his face pale, apologizing profusely as if the spill had been his fault. It's fine, Vincent said curtly, moving his coffee out of the way. Just clean it up. Sophia was crying harder now, the kind of exhausted, hopeless crying that children did when they were past the point of consolation. Marco had his arms crossed, tears streaming down his face despite his best efforts to look tough, so much like Vincent himself that it hurt to witness. They were falling apart in public, and Vincent had no idea how to stop it. He could feel the eyes on them, the whispers, the judgment. Part of him wanted to gather his children and leave, to retreat to the fortress of their home where at least they could break down in private. But another part, the part that Maria's voice still whispered to in his dreams, insisted he keep trying. Hey, they've got turkey dinner here, he tried, his voice softer now, almost pleading. With mashed potatoes and gravy, the kind you like. Remember how Mama used to make it on Sundays? Wrong thing to say. Both children dissolved into harder sobs at the mention of their mother. Vincent closed his eyes, defeat washing over him. He didn't know how to do this. He'd never known how to do this. And now Maria wasn't here to bridge the gap between his awkward attempts at affection and what his children actually needed. The young server finished cleaning the spill and disappeared again without asking for their order. The older waitress who'd first noticed them was now in animated conversation with another server near the kitchen, both of them glancing toward Vincent's table with obvious apprehension. No one wanted to deal with Vincent Romano's family crisis. Vincent was about to signal for the check, to pay for the drinks and get his children home where they could fall apart in peace, when he noticed movement from the corner of his eye. A woman was approaching their table, not hurried like she was being forced, but with a calm, purposeful stride. She was around 30, with warm brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing the diner's standard uniform of black pants and a white blouse with a red apron. But there was something different about her, something in the way she moved that suggested she wasn't afraid. She reached their table and, without asking permission, slid into the booth next to Marco and Sophia. The children looked up, startled out of their crying by this unexpected intrusion. Hi there, the woman said, her voice gentle but not patronizing, the way you'd talk to a friend, not a child you were trying to placate. I'm Emma. I work here. And I noticed you guys seem to be having a really hard night. Vincent opened his mouth to tell her they were fine, that they didn't need help, but something in her eyes stopped him. They were kind, genuinely kind, without the calculation or fear he usually saw when people looked at him. She wasn't looking at Vincent Romano, the man whose reputation preceded him. She was looking at a father with 2 struggling children on Christmas Eve. I don't like it here, Marco said, his voice small and thick with tears. "I want to go home." "That's okay," Emma said, nodding seriously. "Sometimes restaurants are overwhelming, especially on holidays. There's so much noise and so many people, and everything feels too big, doesn't it?" Marco nodded hesitantly. Sophia peeked out from behind her rabbit, her tear-stained face curious despite her distress. Emma smiled. Not the wide, forced smile that adults often gave upset children, but a small, genuine expression that reached her eyes. "Is that your special friend?" she asked Sophia, gesturing to the stuffed rabbit. Sophia nodded, clutching the toy tighter. "They look very loved," Emma said. "I can tell you take good care of them. What's their name?" "Marshmallow," Sophia whispered, so quietly Vincent almost didn't hear it. It was the first word she'd spoken directly to anyone but family in weeks. "Marshmallow is a perfect name," Emma said warmly. "I bet Marshmallow gets hungry too sometimes, right?" Sophia considered this, then nodded slowly. "Well, I was thinking," Emma continued, her tone conversational, "maybe we could find something simple for dinner. Not a big fancy meal, just something warm and easy. Does Marshmallow like chicken fingers?" The corner of Sophia's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but the ghost of one. Vincent watched this exchange in stunned silence. Who was this woman? Why wasn't she afraid? More importantly, how was she reaching his children when he couldn't? "I'll tell you what," Emma said, looking between both twins now. "How about I bring you both some chicken fingers and fries? Kid-sized portions, nothing overwhelming. If you don't want to eat them, that's okay. But if you do get hungry, they'll be right here. Does that sound all right?" Marco glanced at Vincent, as if asking permission. Vincent found himself nodding, unable to form words. "Perfect," Emma said. She turned to Vincent for the first time since sitting down. "And for you, sir?" "Just the coffee is fine," Vincent managed. Emma held his gaze for a moment, and Vincent had the unsettling sensation that she saw straight through him, past the expensive suit, past the reputation, right down to the scared, grieving man underneath. But there was no judgment in her expression, only understanding. "I'll be right back," she said, sliding out of the booth. True to her word, Emma returned within minutes carrying a tray. She set down fresh chocolate milks to replace the spilled one, then placed 2 small plates in front of the children. The portions were modest, just a few chicken fingers and a handful of fries on each plate, with small cups of ketchup on the side. Nothing overwhelming or demanding. "There we go," Emma said, sitting back down next to the twins without invitation. "Now, I don't know about you guys, but I always eat my fries first. They're best when they're hot. What about you, Marco? Are you a fries first person or a chicken first person?" Marco stared at his plate, his little face still set in stubborn lines, but Vincent could see the internal battle playing out. He was hungry, they both were, but admitting it felt like surrender somehow. "I usually eat them together," Marco said finally, his voice barely audible. "A combination approach," Emma said with approval. "That's very sophisticated. I like it." She picked up a fry from the communal basket she'd brought for herself and took a bite, not watching the children directly, just eating casually as if this was the most normal dinner in the world. The lack of pressure, Vincent realized, was the key. She wasn't forcing them, wasn't begging or bribing. She was just being present. After a long moment, Marco picked up a fry, then another. Sophia watched her brother, then carefully selected a chicken finger, taking a tiny bite. Vincent felt something crack in his chest, relief so profound it was almost painful. They were eating. His children were eating. Emma chatted quietly as the twins worked through their food. Nothing heavy or demanding, just gentle observations about the snow outside, a funny thing that had happened earlier in her shift, a question about what movie they were hoping to watch tonight. She asked Sophia if Marshmallow wanted a French fry, which made Sophia giggle. Actually, giggle, as she held a fry up to the stuffed rabbit's mouth. Vincent sat frozen, his coffee cooling in his hand, watching this stranger perform a miracle he couldn't manage. She wasn't doing anything extraordinary, nothing he couldn't have done himself in theory. But there was something in her manner, her genuine warmth, that reached his children in a way his grief-stiffened approaches couldn't. "You're doing such a good job," Emma said to Sophia when the little girl had finished half her plate. "And Marco, look at that. You ate almost everything. Should we save room for dessert, or are you too full?" "What kind of dessert?" Marco asked, the first hint of normal childhood interest breaking through his shell. "Well, we have chocolate cake, apple pie, and, my personal favorite, vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup." "Ice cream," Sophia whispered. "Excellent choice," Emma said. "Same for you, Marco?" He nodded, and Emma squeezed his shoulder gently before sliding out of the booth. "2 ice creams coming right up. Be right back." She disappeared toward the kitchen, leaving Vincent alone with his children for the first time since she'd sat down. The difference in them was remarkable. They were calmer, sitting up straighter. The desperate edge of their earlier tears had softened into simple tiredness. "She's nice," Sophia said quietly, more to Marshmallow than to Vincent. "Yeah," Marco agreed, picking at the last few fries on his plate. Vincent swallowed hard. "She is nice," he managed. "I'm glad she helped you guys eat." Emma returned with 2 small bowls of ice cream, chocolate syrup drizzled artfully on top. The twins received them with shy smiles, real smiles, that Vincent hadn't seen in months. As the children ate their dessert, Emma caught Vincent's eye and gave a small nod, a silent communication that said she'd done what she could, that they'd be okay now. She stood to leave, to return to her other tables, but Vincent found his voice. "Wait," he said, the word coming out rougher than intended. "Thank you for this." Emma smiled, that same genuine expression that transformed her entire face. "They're sweet kids. They just needed someone to meet them where they are." She started to walk away, but Vincent called after her again. "Your name? Emma, right?" She turned back, nodding. "Emma Carter." "Thank you, Emma Carter," Vincent said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. She nodded once more and disappeared into the flow of the dinner rush, moving between tables with practiced ease. Vincent watched her go, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not attraction exactly, though she was certainly pretty in an understated way. It was something deeper than that. She'd seen his children at their worst, had witnessed his failure as a father, and instead of judging or withdrawing, she'd simply helped. No agenda, no fear, no calculation, just basic human kindness. When was the last time someone had shown him kindness without wanting something in return? Sophia had chocolate syrup on her nose. Marco was swinging his legs under the table, a normal kid thing he hadn't done in months. They were still sad. Vincent could see it in the way Sophia held Marshmallow close, in the occasionally distant look in Marco's eyes. Grief didn't disappear because of one good meal, but something had shifted. Some terrible pressure had eased. And for the first time since Maria's death, Vincent felt like maybe, just maybe, they could survive this. The rest of the meal passed quietly. The twins finished their ice cream, and Vincent finally drank some of his cold coffee, not caring about the temperature. He paid the bill when the young server brought it, leaving a substantial tip, more than generous, enough to make the kids' eyes widen. But it wasn't enough. Vincent found himself looking around the diner, searching for Emma. He spotted her at a table across the room, laughing at something an elderly customer was saying, her whole face lit with genuine amusement. He pulled out his wallet again, extracted 5 $100 bills, and tucked them under his empty coffee cup, where Emma would find them when she cleared their table. It was too much, absurdly too much for the service she'd provided. But Vincent didn't care. She'd given his children something precious tonight, something he couldn't buy or force or negotiate. She deserved more than money could repay. "Come on, guys," he said quietly to the twins. "Time to go home." They slid out of the booth without complaint, and Vincent helped them into their winter coats. Sophia's pink with white fur trim, Marco's navy blue with a hood. As they headed toward the door, Sophia tugged on Vincent's hand. "Daddy?" He looked down at her. She so rarely called him daddy these days, usually just addressing him with you, or not speaking to him directly at all. The word made his throat tight. "Will we come back here?" Sophia asked, her dark eyes searching his face. "To see Emma?" Vincent glanced back at the diner, at the warm lights and the cheerful chaos of Christmas Eve, at Emma, who was still chatting with the elderly couple, completely unaware of the impact she'd made. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said, surprised by his own certainty. "We'll come back." Marco took his other hand, another rare gesture, and together the 3 of them stepped out into the snowy night. The cold hit them immediately, but Vincent barely felt it. He was too busy processing what had just happened, too busy trying to understand why a simple waitress who'd shown his children basic kindness had affected him so deeply. In the car, both twins fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from their emotional upheaval. Vincent watched them in the rearview mirror as Tommy drove them home through the quiet streets. Their faces were peaceful now, relaxed in sleep in a way they rarely achieved these days. Something had changed tonight. Vincent couldn't explain it, couldn't put it into words that made sense. But that woman, Emma, had somehow reached through the wall of grief and anger and fear that surrounded his family and touched something human underneath. She'd seen them as people, not as Vincent Romano's damaged children. She'd seen him as a struggling father, not a criminal to fear. And in that seeing, in that simple act of recognition, something had cracked in the armor Vincent had built around his heart. Just a hairline fracture, barely noticeable. But it was there. As the Cadillac pulled up to his brownstone in Carroll Gardens, a beautiful, historic building that Maria had loved, Vincent carefully lifted Sophia from her seat, then Marco, carrying both sleeping children inside. He laid them in their beds, removed their shoes, pulled blankets up to their chins. Sophia still clutched Marshmallow. Marco's face was smudged with chocolate from the ice cream. They looked like regular kids, having regular dreams about Christmas morning. Vincent stood in the doorway between their rooms. They shared a bathroom, and he'd started leaving both doors open so they didn't feel alone, and felt the full weight of the evening settling over him. For 8 months, he'd been drowning, trying to be strong, trying to hold everything together, trying to run his business and raise his children and process his own grief all at once. And he'd been failing at all of it. He'd watched his children slip further away each day, watched the light dim in their eyes, and he hadn't known how to bring it back. Then a stranger in a diner had knelt to their level, spoken to them like human beings, and reminded all three of them, that they were still capable of connection, that the world still held warmth and kindness and understanding, even in the depths of loss. Vincent thought about Emma's eyes, warm brown, like coffee with cream, the way she'd smiled at his children, without pity, just acceptance, the gentle authority in her voice that had cut through their resistance like it was nothing. He would go back to that diner, soon, not just for the children, though he'd use them as an excuse, but for himself because something about Emma Carter had made him feel something besides grief and rage for the first time in 8 months. Hope, maybe, or possibility, or just life. Vincent Romano, who'd spent years building walls to protect himself from vulnerability, who'd perfected the art of emotional distance as a survival mechanism in his dangerous world, felt those walls beginning to crack, and it terrified him. But it also felt like breathing after drowning for too long. Outside, snow continued to fall over Brooklyn, blanketing the city in white. Christmas lights twinkled in windows up and down the street. Somewhere, families were gathered around trees. Children were fighting sleep in anticipation of morning. People were sharing love and hope and all the things Vincent thought he'd lost forever. Maybe, he thought as he finally retreated to his own room, maybe they weren't as lost as he'd believed. Maybe, with help from an unexpected source, they could find their way back. The thought followed him into sleep, along with the image of Emma's smile and the sound of his children's laughter. Precious sounds he'd thought were gone forever. It was just the beginning. The morning after Christmas arrived with that peculiar quiet that follows major holidays, the city exhaling after holding its breath through weeks of frantic preparation. Vincent woke early, as always, his internal clock calibrated to 5:30 regardless of the day or his exhaustion level. The house was silent except for the old radiators clicking and hissing as they pushed heat through the brownstone's veins. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, his mind immediately returning to the previous night, the diner, the twins' meltdown, and Emma, the waitress who'd somehow performed a small miracle with nothing but patience and genuine kindness. Vincent had built his life on reading people, on understanding motivations and calculating angles. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price or a pressure point. That was the fundamental truth of his world, the axiom upon which his entire empire was constructed. But Emma Carter had asked for nothing, expected nothing. She'd simply helped because his children needed help, and then she'd walked away. It unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. He rose, dressed in his usual morning uniform of pressed slacks and a crisp shirt. Even on the day after Christmas, standards mattered, and went to check on the twins. Sophia was sprawled across her bed, one leg hanging off the side, Marshmallow tucked under her chin. Marco had somehow twisted himself completely sideways, his pillow on the floor. But they were sleeping peacefully, their faces relaxed in a way Vincent hadn't seen in months. Whatever Emma had done, however she'd reached them, it had given them a night of genuine rest. Vincent made coffee, strong and black, the way he'd drunk it since his early 20s, and sat at the kitchen table, the morning paper untouched in front of him. The house felt different in the morning light. Maria's presence was everywhere. In the curtains she'd chosen, the artwork she'd hung, the ridiculous rooster-shaped cookie jar that Vincent had hated but kept because it made her laugh. 8 months, and he still reached for his phone to call her a dozen times a day, still turned to tell her something before remembering she wasn't there, still woke up reaching for her side of the bed. His phone buzzed. A text from Tony, his right-hand man. Need to meet about the shipment. Today, if possible. Vincent replied quickly. Tomorrow. Taking today with the kids. It was a luxury he rarely afforded himself, this stepping back from business. But the twins needed him, and after last night's breakdown, he wasn't going to leave them with the housekeeper on the day after Christmas. Sophia appeared first, shuffling into the kitchen with Marshmallow dragging behind her, her dark hair a tangled mess around her face. She climbed into the chair next to Vincent without speaking, and he poured her a small glass of orange juice, sliding it across the table. "Morning, sweetheart. Morning, she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Did you sleep okay? Sophia nodded, taking a sip of juice. Then, after a long pause, Daddy? Yes? Can we see Emma again? Vincent's hand paused halfway to his coffee cup. The lady from the restaurant? Yeah, she was nice. She understood about Marshmallow. The simplicity of children. They formed attachments based on who understood them, who made them feel safe. No calculation, no agenda. Just pure emotional truth. We can go back to the diner, Vincent said carefully. Would you like that? Sophia nodded enthusiastically, more animation in her face than he'd seen in weeks. Marco appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of voices, his hair sticking up at odd angles. Go back where? He asked, suspicious by nature even at 6 years old. Too much like his father. To Rosie's diner, Sophia said. To see Emma. Oh. Marco considered this, then shrugged. Okay. The chicken fingers were good. High praise from Marco, who'd barely eaten anything in recent memory. They spent Christmas Day quietly, opening the presents that Vincent had stressed over for weeks, never sure what would bring joy versus painful reminders. He'd bought too much, probably, trying to compensate for the absence of their mother with material goods. But the twins seemed genuinely pleased with their new toys, and they played together in the living room while Vincent watched, grateful for any moment of normalcy. That evening, as he tucked them into bed, Sophia looked up at him with those serious dark eyes that were so much like Maria's it hurt. Daddy? Are we going to be okay? The question stabbed through him. What could he say? That he didn't know. That he was terrified every single day that he was failing them? That his inability to process his own grief was damaging theirs? Yes, he said instead, with all the certainty he could muster. We're going to be okay. It takes time, but we'll get there together. Sophia nodded, seemingly satisfied, and closed her eyes. Vincent sat there for a long time after she fell asleep, watching his children breathe, wondering how anyone survived the weight of loving someone this much. 3 days passed before Vincent found an excuse to return to the diner. He told himself it was for the twins, that they needed the continuity, the positive association. But if he was being honest, and Vincent made a point of being honest with himself, even when the truth was uncomfortable, he was curious about Emma Carter. Who was she? Why did she work in a modest diner when she clearly had intelligence and capability that could have taken her elsewhere? What had made her approach his table when everyone else had kept their distance? He wanted answers, and Vincent Romano was a man who got what he wanted. It was late morning on a Thursday, between the breakfast rush and the lunch crowd. The diner was quiet. A few customers scattered across the booths, a lone man at the counter reading a newspaper. The same Christmas decorations still hung in the windows, though they'd be coming down soon for New Year's. Vincent entered alone this time, having left the twins with Mrs. Chen, their housekeeper. He wanted to observe, to understand, without the complications of managing his children. Emma was behind the counter, refilling salt shakers with methodical precision. She wore the same uniform as before. Black pants, white blouse, red apron, her hair pulled back in that practical ponytail. There was something about the way she moved, efficient but unhurried, that suggested a quiet competence. She looked up as the door chimed and recognition flickered across her face, followed by something that might have been pleasure. She smiled, that same genuine expression that had disarmed him on Christmas Eve. Well, hello, she said, setting down the salt shaker. Back so soon? Where are your twins? Home, Vincent said, approaching the counter. I wanted to thank you properly. For the other night. Emma's expression turned slightly puzzled. I found the tip you left. That was more than generous. Honestly, it was too much. It wasn't enough, Vincent countered. He slid onto one of the counter stools, watching her face. You helped my children when they were falling apart, when I couldn't reach them. That's worth more than money. Something shifted in Emma's eyes. A softness, an understanding. They were struggling. Sometimes kids just need someone who isn't carrying the same grief, you know? Someone who can meet them without all the history and pain attached. The insight struck Vincent as remarkably perceptive. You have children? A daughter. Lily. She's 4. Emma's whole face changed when she talked about her child, lit from within with obvious love. She's with my mom today. I work doubles most days, so my mother helps with childcare. That must be difficult, Vincent observed, filing away the information. Single mother, working long hours, relying on family support. It is what it is, Emma said with a shrug that tried for casual but didn't quite hide the weight behind it. We manage. Can I get you some coffee? Please. Black. She poured it with practiced ease, sliding the cup across the counter. So what brings you back? Besides the apology, which really wasn't necessary. Vincent wrapped his hands around the warm cup, considering how much to reveal. Honestly, I wanted to understand how you did it. How you reached them when I couldn't. Emma leaned against the counter, her expression thoughtful. You want the truth? It's easier for strangers sometimes. You're their father. You're carrying your own grief about their mother, and they can feel that. It makes everything heavier. I could just be present with them without all that weight. You knew, Vincent said slowly. About their mother. I guessed. The way they were crying for her. The way you looked. Emma's voice was gentle. I lost my husband 3 years ago. Different circumstances, but I recognize that particular kind of pain. Vincent's eyes sharpened. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Emma refilled his coffee without asking. It gets easier eventually. Not better exactly, but easier. You learn to carry it differently. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The diner's ambient noise, the clink of dishes, the murmur of conversation, filling the space between them. Vincent found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did, especially with people he'd just met. How old were they when you lost her? Emma asked quietly. Your twins? 5.5? It was a car accident. Black ice. The words came easier than expected. Vincent rarely discussed personal matters with anyone, but something about Emma invited honesty. That's so hard. That age, they understand enough to know she's gone, but not enough to process what that means. Emma's voice carried the weight of experience. My Lily was only 1 when her father left, so she doesn't remember him. Sometimes I think that's easier, and sometimes I think it's worse. I don't know. Left? Vincent caught the word choice. Not passed away? Emma's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. No, he decided fatherhood wasn't for him about 6 months after she was born. Signed away his parental rights and disappeared. Haven't heard from him since. The casual cruelty of it struck Vincent. He might be many things, some of them not good, but he couldn't fathom abandoning his children. That's unconscionable. That's one word for it, Emma said with a dry laugh. But honestly, we're better off. A man who doesn't want to be a father would only make things harder. Lily and I, we're a team. We figure it out. Vincent studied her. This woman who worked double shifts and raised a daughter alone and still had enough compassion left over to help strangers' children in a diner on Christmas Eve. There was strength in her, the kind that came from enduring hardship rather than inflicting it. Your daughter is lucky to have you, he said. Emma smiled, and this time it reached her eyes fully. I'm the lucky one. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. She glanced toward the kitchen where another server was gesturing. I should check on table 6, but it was good to see you again. Emma, Vincent called as she started to turn away. She looked back, eyebrows raised in question. Would it be all right if I brought the twins by again? They've been asking about you. Her face softened. Of course. I'd love to see them. Anytime. Vincent nursed his coffee for another 20 minutes, watching Emma move through the diner with easy grace. She knew most of the customers by name, remembered their usual orders, laughed at their jokes with genuine amusement. She was the kind of person who made spaces warmer simply by being in them. When he finally left after leaving another generous tip that he knew she'd protest, Vincent felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not attraction exactly, though Emma was undeniably pretty in her understated way. It was more like recognition. She understood loss. She understood the weight of single parenthood. She understood grief that didn't have easy answers. For the first time since Maria's death, Vincent had spoken with someone who didn't treat him like Vincent Romano the criminal, or Vincent Romano the bereaved widower to be handled carefully. Emma had just talked to him like a person, like a father struggling with impossible circumstances. It was refreshing, disarming, and more than a little dangerous. Vincent started returning to the diner regularly. At first, he brought the twins. They lit up when they saw Emma, and she always took time to chat with them, even during busy shifts. She'd ask about their day, compliment Sophia's drawings, listen to Marco's rambling stories about his toy cars with patient interest. But he also came alone sometimes, during the late morning lull when he could sit at the counter and talk with Emma between her duties. They fell into an easy rhythm. He'd order coffee, she'd pour it, and they'd discuss small things. Her daughter Lily's obsession with dinosaurs, the twins' struggles with nightmares, the ridiculous drama among the diner's staff. Tony thinks I'm losing my mind, Vincent said one morning, about 2 weeks after that first return visit. He was on his 3rd cup of coffee, and Emma was rolling silverware between customers. Tony? My business partner. Vincent chose the words carefully. He'd been deliberately vague about his profession, and Emma hadn't pressed. He thinks I'm spending too much time away from work. Emma glanced up from the forks she was wrapping in napkins. Are you? Probably. Vincent smiled slightly. But the twins seem happier, more settled. That's worth whatever business I'm missing. They do seem better, Emma agreed. Sophia's smiling more. And Marco. He told me a joke last time you brought them in. A real joke. The kind kids tell that doesn't quite make sense, but they think is hilarious. What was it? Why did the chicken go to the seance? To talk to the other side. Emma delivered it deadpan, then grinned. He was so proud of himself. Vincent felt warmth spread through his chest. He hasn't told jokes in months. Not since… I know. Emma's hand briefly covered his on the counter. Just a moment of contact, there and gone. You're doing a good job with them. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. The simple validation meant more than Vincent could articulate. He'd spent 8 months feeling like a failure, like he was fumbling through every decision and getting it wrong. Hearing someone tell him he was doing well, someone who had no reason to lie, who gained nothing from false praise, struck something deep. Thank you, he said quietly. The bell above the door chimed, and a group of lunch customers entered. Emma straightened, slipping back into server mode. Duty calls. Same time tomorrow? It had become their routine, Vincent appearing around 11, staying for an hour or so before heading to whatever business demanded his attention. It was probably foolish, probably risky. Tony was right to be concerned about the time Vincent was spending away from operations. But Vincent found himself looking forward to these morning conversations more than he'd looked forward to anything in a very long time. 3 weeks after Christmas, Vincent brought the twins to the diner on a Saturday afternoon. It was busier than usual, families celebrating various things, the weekend crowd. Emma was hustling between tables, but she still took time to greet Sophia and Marco with genuine enthusiasm. There are my favorite twins, she said, crouching to their level. Guess what? We just got fresh apple pie in. Want to split a slice after lunch? The twins nodded eagerly, and Emma ruffled Marco's hair affectionately before heading to put in their order. Vincent watched his children, really watched them. Sophia was coloring on the paper placemat Emma had brought, humming quietly to herself. Marco was building a tower out of sugar packets, his face scrunched in concentration. They looked like normal kids having a normal meal out. When had that happened? When had the terrible, suffocating grief that had colored every moment begun to ease into something manageable? Your kids are adorable, said a voice from the next booth. Vincent turned to see a woman in her 50s smiling warmly at the twins. How old are they? 6, Vincent replied. Sweet age. Challenging, but sweet. The woman returned to her meal, and Vincent marveled at the normalcy of it. A stranger making small talk about his children in a diner, like he was just another father, not Vincent Romano, whose name made people nervous. Emma brought their food, the twins' usual chicken fingers and fries, a burger for Vincent, and slid into the booth next to Sophia for a moment. I need your expert opinion, Emma said seriously to Sophia. Do you think Marshmallow would like a tiny piece of apple pie? Or is that too fancy for a rabbit? Sophia giggled. Actually giggled. Rabbits don't eat pie. Are you sure? I thought I saw one in a bakery once. Emma, you're silly. But Sophia was grinning and Marco was laughing, and Vincent felt something in his chest that might have been happiness. Later, after the twins had demolished their pie and were absorbed in coloring, Emma refilled Vincent's coffee. You've been coming here a lot, she observed. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Is that a problem? No. Emma met his eyes. But people talk, you know, especially my coworkers. They think it's strange that you… She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. That someone like you keeps coming to a place like this. So she did know, or at least suspected. Vincent's reputation wasn't exactly secret, and Brooklyn neighborhoods talked. Does it bother you? He asked, knowing who I am? Emma was quiet for a moment, wiping down the already clean counter with a thoughtfulness that suggested she was really considering the question. I know what people say about you, she said finally, her voice low enough that only Vincent could hear. I'd have to be deaf not to. But you know what I actually see? I see a father who's trying his absolute best for his kids despite being in over his head. I see someone who tips generously, treats service staff with respect, and shows up consistently for the people who matter to him. She shrugged. Whatever else you do, however you make your living, that's your business. You've never been anything but kind to me and mine. Vincent stared at her, genuinely shocked. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are. I'm not most people. Emma smiled. Besides, anyone who lets their 6-year-old daughter name their stuffed animal Marshmallow can't be all bad. It was absurd. Ridiculous, even. Vincent's business involved things that would horrify this kind-hearted waitress if she knew the details. He'd made choices, done things that couldn't be waved away by generous tipping and showing up to a diner regularly. But Emma Carter looked at him and saw a father, a person, not a reputation or a threat. When was the last time someone had done that? Emma, one of the other servers called from the kitchen. Order up! She squeezed Vincent's shoulder briefly as she passed, a casual gesture of friendship that nevertheless sent warmth through him. He watched her work, watched her laugh with customers, and efficiently juggle multiple tables, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this settled. Content, maybe. That was the word. When had he last felt content? Sophia tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can Lily come play with us sometime? Emma says she likes dolls like me. The question caught Vincent off guard. His children playing with Emma's daughter. That felt like crossing some invisible line, moving from casual acquaintanceship into actual friendship, into his real life. But looking at Sophia's hopeful face, at Marco nodding enthusiastically beside her, Vincent couldn't find a reason to say no. Let me talk to Emma about it, he said. When Emma returned to clear their plates, Vincent broached the subject. The twins want to know if Lily might like to have a play date sometime. Emma's face lit up. Really? Lily would love that. She's been asking about the nice kids from Mama's work ever since I mentioned them. Does Sunday work? We could meet somewhere neutral, maybe the Children's Museum in Brooklyn. That sounds perfect. Emma pulled out her phone to exchange numbers, and Vincent found himself looking forward to Sunday with an anticipation that felt almost foreign. They left the diner as the afternoon shadows were lengthening, the twins chattering excitedly about the upcoming playdate. Vincent helped them into their coats, his mind replaying the afternoon, the easy conversation, Emma's smile, the way his children had laughed. His phone buzzed as they reached the car. Tony, boss, we need to talk. Tonight. Vincent sighed. Reality intruding on the bubble of normalcy he'd built. Where? Usual place. 9 p.m. Important. The usual place was a social club in Red Hook, the kind of establishment where Vincent conducted the business he preferred to keep separate from his children's lives. He'd managed to maintain that separation for years, but lately, it felt like the walls between his two worlds were getting thinner. That night, after the twins were in bed, Vincent met Tony at the club. His right-hand man was waiting in the back room, along with Carlo and Frankie, two of Vincent's most trusted associates. Boss, Tony said without preamble, we need to discuss this diner situation. Vincent's expression hardened. What situation? You've been going there almost every day for 3 weeks. People notice. People talk. Tony's face was grave. There's a waitress, Emma Carter. You're spending a lot of time with her. I'm eating lunch, Vincent said coldly. That's not a crime. No, but it makes you predictable, and predictable is dangerous. Carlo leaned forward. Plus, if anyone wanted to get to you, they now know exactly where to find you at 11 a.m. most mornings. Vincent's jaw tightened. They weren't wrong. He had been careless, allowing routine to overtake caution. But the alternative was going back to the isolation, the carefully controlled existence where every movement was calculated for safety. The twins need stability, he said. They need normal things. Emma has been good for them. We're not saying stop going, Tony said carefully. We're saying be aware. Be careful. If someone decides to use this against you, they won't. Vincent's voice carried absolute certainty. Because if anyone even looks at that diner wrong, at Emma or those kids, they'll answer to me personally. Make sure that message gets around. The three men exchanged glances. It was the most protective Vincent had been about anyone outside his immediate family in years. Understood, boss, Tony said. We'll make sure people know the diner is off limits. Vincent left the meeting feeling unsettled. His two worlds were colliding, and he wasn't sure how to navigate it. Emma represented something pure, something untouched by the darkness of his profession, but protecting her meant acknowledging that darkness existed, meant potentially exposing her to the very thing he wanted to keep her separate from. He thought about her words. Whatever else you do, however you make your living, that's your business. She'd given him a pass, a space to be just Vincent the father, not Vincent Romano the businessman. But could he accept that grace knowing the risks it might bring her? His phone lit up with a text. Emma, Lily is so excited about Sunday she can't sleep. Thank you for this. Vincent stared at the message, at the simple joy contained in those words. When was the last time he'd given someone something to be excited about, rather than something to fear? He typed back, the twins haven't stopped talking about it either. See you Sunday. 3 dots appeared then, looking forward to it. Good night, Vincent. She'd used his first name. Not Mr. Romano, not Sir. Just Vincent. It felt like a gift, that small intimacy. Vincent sat in his car outside the social club for a long time, watching the Brooklyn streets, thinking about waitresses and children, and the dangerous thing called hope that was starting to take root in his chest, despite every reason to resist it. Tomorrow he'd go back to the diner. He'd have his coffee, talk with Emma, pretend for an hour that he was just a normal man having a normal conversation with a woman who made him feel human. And on Sunday, he'd take his children to meet hers, and they'd spend a day being just another family in a museum. It was risky. It was foolish. It went against every survival instinct he'd honed over decades. But Vincent Romano, who'd built an empire on calculated risks, decided this was one risk worth taking, even if he wasn't entirely sure why, even if it terrified him more than any business deal ever had. Because Emma Carter, with her warm eyes and genuine smile and uncomplicated kindness, had done something no one else had managed in 8 months. She'd reminded him that he was still capable of feeling something besides grief and rage. And that was worth protecting, worth pursuing, worth whatever complications it might bring. The decision settled over him with a strange sense of rightness, and Vincent finally started the car and drove home through the quiet streets, already looking forward to tomorrow's coffee and the smile that would greet him when he walked through that diner door. Sunday arrived cold and clear, the kind of January day where the sun shone brilliantly but provided no warmth. Vincent dressed the twins carefully. Sophia in her favorite purple sweater, Marco in the blue button-down that made him look startlingly grown up. They'd been buzzing with excitement all morning, barely touching their breakfast. "Is Lily nice?" Sophia asked for the 10th time as Vincent helped her into her coat. "Emma says she's very nice, and she likes dolls, just like you. What if she doesn't like me?" Vincent crouched to Sophia's level, recognizing the anxiety beneath the question. His daughter had lost so much confidence since Maria's death, second-guessing everything. "She's going to love you, sweetheart. Both of you. How could she not?" The Brooklyn Children's Museum was moderately crowded, families taking advantage of the weekend, children's voices echoing off the colorful walls. Vincent spotted Emma immediately. She stood near the entrance, holding the hand of a small girl with curly brown hair and Emma's same warm eyes. "There they are," Emma said brightly, and Lily looked up with curiosity. The children's introduction was awkward at first, shy glances, uncertain smiles. But Emma had brought a small bag of toys, and within minutes, all 4 children were sitting on the museum floor, building something elaborate with blocks. Vincent and Emma stood nearby, watching with the careful attention of parents at a first playdate. "They're doing well," Emma observed, relief evident in her voice. "Better than I expected," Vincent admitted. He watched Marco carefully hand Lily a blue block, explaining something about structural integrity that no 6-year-old should reasonably understand. "Your daughter is patient with them. She's used to being around all kinds of people at the diner. Makes her adaptable." Emma smiled as Lily laughed at something Sophia said. "This is good for her too. She doesn't have many friends her age." They wandered through the museum exhibits, the children darting ahead to explore interactive displays, while Vincent and Emma followed at a leisurely pace. It felt remarkably normal. 2 single parents supervising their kids, discussing mundane things like Lily's pickiness about vegetables and Marco's fear of thunderstorms. "Can I ask you something personal?" Emma said as they watched the children play in a mock grocery store exhibit. "You can ask. I may not answer." Emma smiled at his honesty. "Fair enough. What happened to their mother? You said it was an accident, but—" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophia carefully place play food in a toy shopping cart. Black ice. She was driving home from her sister's house. The car spun out, hit a guardrail. She died at the scene. The words came easier now, worn smooth by repetition, though the pain beneath them remained sharp. "I'm so sorry." Emma's hand found his arm, a gentle pressure of sympathy. "That must have been devastating." "It was like the world ended," Vincent said quietly. She was the warm one, the one who knew how to make everything okay. I provided for them, protected them, but she was their heart. When she died, I didn't know how to fill that space." "You can't fill it," Emma said gently. "You can only learn to live around the hole it leaves." That's what I learned after Lily's father left. I kept trying to be both parents, to make up for his absence until I realized that was impossible. I could only be the best version of myself and hope it was enough. Vincent looked at her, really looked at her. She understood in a way few people could. Not just the mechanics of single parenthood, but the emotional weight of it, the constant fear of inadequacy. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Make it look so easy?" Emma laughed, but there was an edge to it. "It's not easy. I work 2 jobs, my mother has to help constantly, and some nights I cry in the bathroom after Lily goes to sleep because I'm terrified I'm screwing everything up. But you get up the next morning and keep going because what else is there?" The rawness of her admission struck Vincent. She didn't pretend, didn't maintain the facade of having it all together. She was just honest about the struggle. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "So are you." They stood side by side, watching their children play, and something shifted between them. A recognition, an understanding that went beyond casual friendship. They were both people carrying heavy burdens, trying their best, occasionally failing, but showing up anyway. Sophia suddenly burst into tears. Vincent moved immediately, but Emma was faster, kneeling beside the little girl. "What happened, sweetheart?" "I miss Mama," Sophia sobbed, clutching Marshmallow. Lily has a mama and Marco has a mama, but I want my mama. The other children had gone quiet, uncertain. Vincent felt the familiar helplessness rising. How did he fix this? How did he make it better when nothing could bring Maria back? But Emma simply gathered Sophia into her arms, holding her while she cried. I know, baby. I know it hurts so much. Your mama loved you so much, and it's okay to miss her. It's okay to be sad. It's not fair, Sophia wailed. You're right. It's not fair at all. Emma didn't try to explain or justify, just validated the grief. Sometimes life isn't fair, and that's really hard. Vincent stood frozen, watching Emma comfort his daughter with a natural grace he'd never mastered. Marco had moved closer, leaning against Emma's side, and she wrapped an arm around him too, holding both twins while they processed their pain. Lily watched with solemn eyes, then carefully approached and placed one of her toy dinosaurs in Sophia's lap. You can hold T-Rex, she said quietly. He makes me feel better when I'm sad. The simple kindness broke something in Vincent. He turned away, fighting his own tears, overwhelmed by the weight of everything, his children's pain, his inadequacy, Emma's unexpected presence in their lives, this little girl who barely knew Sophia offering comfort in the only way she knew how. Emma's hand found his back, a steady pressure. It's okay, she said softly, somehow managing to comfort all of them at once. This is part of healing. They need to feel it, not suppress it. Eventually, Sophia's tears subsided. Emma wiped her face gently, helped her blow her nose, and suggested they all get hot chocolate from the museum cafe. The children agreed, and they made their way to the small eating area, Sophia still hiccuping occasionally but calmer. As they sat around a table, cups of hot chocolate in front of each child, Vincent found himself studying Emma. She'd handled Sophia's meltdown with remarkable composure, knowing exactly what to say and do. She'd included all the children in the comfort, made space for their different needs. Thank you, he said quietly while the kids were absorbed in their drinks, for knowing what to do when I didn't. You would have figured it out, Emma said. But sometimes it helps to have someone who's a little removed from the situation, less emotionally invested, you know. Except Vincent was beginning to suspect Emma was becoming more emotionally invested than either of them had anticipated. They spent another hour at the museum before the children started showing signs of exhaustion. As they prepared to leave, Lily threw her arms around Sophia. Can we play again? Please? Yes, Sophia said emphatically, returning the hug. Vincent and Emma exchanged glances, silently communicating what both were thinking. This had gone well, better than expected, and the children clearly wanted more. How about next weekend? Emma suggested. We could go to the park if the weather's nice, or maybe the library has a story time. The park, Marco said immediately, with the big playground. Plans made, they separated at the museum entrance. Vincent loaded the twins into the car, and as they drove away, he watched Emma in the rearview mirror, holding Lily's hand as they walked toward the subway. Something had fundamentally shifted today. What had started as casual kindness from a waitress had evolved into something more complex. A genuine connection, a budding friendship, maybe even the early stages of something deeper that Vincent wasn't ready to name. I like Emma, Sophia announced from the back seat. And Lily. Can they come to our house next time? Vincent hesitated. Bringing Emma to his home felt significant, like crossing a threshold from public interactions into his private life. But he couldn't think of a reason to say no. Maybe, he said. We'll see. That night, after the twins were asleep, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Thank you for today. Lily hasn't stopped talking about her new friends. Vincent stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. What did he say? How did he express what he was feeling when he couldn't fully articulate it to himself? Finally, he typed, Sophia and Marco feel the same. You were amazing with them today, especially when Sophia broke down. Emma's response came quickly. That's just part of it, isn't it? The grief comes in waves. We just ride them out together. Together. The word resonated with Vincent in ways he hadn't expected. Same time next Sunday? He wrote. It's a date, Emma replied, then immediately followed with, not a date. Just, plans. With the kids. Vincent smiled at her flustered correction. I know what you meant, but part of him wondered if maybe, eventually, it could be a date. A real one. Just the two of them, without children as buffers, having a conversation that acknowledged this growing thing between them. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. Vincent Romano had built his life on control, on managing risks and maintaining emotional distance. But Emma Carter, with her warm smile and her honest struggles and her uncomplicated kindness, was dismantling those carefully constructed walls brick by brick, and Vincent found he didn't want to stop her. January melted into February with an unusual warmth, as if winter itself was tired of the cold. Vincent found himself in unfamiliar territory, looking forward to Sundays with an anticipation he hadn't felt in years, checking his phone more frequently than a man in his position should, smiling at random moments when something reminded him of Emma's laugh. The weekly playdates had become routine. Parks, museums, once even a pottery painting place where all 4 children had created lopsided masterpieces. Vincent's home began accumulating small reminders of these outings. Sophia's painted ceramic unicorn on the mantel, Marco's finger-painted canvas on the refrigerator, both featuring stick figure families that now included more than just the 3 of them. But it was the moments after the children were occupied, when Vincent and Emma would talk quietly on park benches or museum cafes, that had begun to mean the most. They'd progressed beyond surface pleasantries into genuine conversations, Emma sharing her fears about raising Lily alone, Vincent confessing his terror that he was failing his children, both of them finding comfort in the honesty. Tony noticed the change immediately. "Boss, you're different," he said one evening at the social club, studying Vincent with concern. "Distracted. Your head isn't in the business like it used to be." "The business is running fine," Vincent countered, though he knew Tony was right. His focus had shifted, his priorities realigning in ways that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "It's the waitress, isn't it?" "Emma." Tony's expression was carefully neutral. "You're getting attached." Vincent didn't deny it. What would be the point? "She's good for the twins. They're happier than they've been since Maria died." "And what about you? Is she good for you too?" The question hung in the air between them. Vincent had been asking himself the same thing for weeks, unable to find a simple answer. Emma made him feel human again, made him remember there was more to life than grief and business and survival. But she also represented vulnerability, a potential weakness in the armor he'd carefully maintained for decades. "I don't know," Vincent said finally, "but I'm not ready to walk away." Tony sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Just be careful, boss. People are starting to talk, and not everyone in our world appreciates it when you show that kind of softness." The warning lodged itself in Vincent's chest like a splinter. He'd been careless, allowing his guard to drop, forgetting that in his world, caring about someone made them a target. The next Sunday, Vincent suggested they skip the public outing and instead invited Emma and Lily to his home for dinner. Emma hesitated, clearly understanding the significance of the invitation, but finally agreed. They arrived at 6, Lily clutching a picture she'd drawn for Sophia and Marco. Vincent's brownstone, a beautiful historic building in Carroll Gardens with original moldings and Maria's careful decorating touches, seemed to impress Emma, though she tried to hide it. "This is lovely," she said, taking in the high ceilings and hardwood floors, the family photos that still lined the walls. "Very homey." "Maria decorated most of it," Vincent said, then immediately regretted bringing up his late wife. But Emma just smiled with understanding. She had excellent taste. The children disappeared upstairs immediately, their laughter echoing through the house. Vincent led Emma to the kitchen, where he'd prepared a simple dinner: pasta with marinara sauce, garlic bread, salad. Nothing fancy, but honest food that he'd learned to cook out of necessity. "You cook?" Emma seemed genuinely surprised. "Had to learn. The twins needed meals and I couldn't order takeout every night." Vincent stirred the sauce, avoiding her eyes. "I'm not great at it, but it's edible." Emma moved beside him, peering into the pot. "Smells delicious. Can I help?" They worked together in comfortable silence, Emma setting the table while Vincent finished the garlic bread. It felt remarkably domestic, this casual collaboration in his kitchen, and Vincent found himself imagining this as routine. Emma in his space, helping with dinner, the children playing upstairs like they belonged together. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt right in a way nothing had felt right since Maria's death. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. 4 children talking over each other, Lily telling elaborate stories about her toy dinosaurs, Marco and Sophia showing off their school artwork, everyone laughing when Vincent accidentally knocked over the pepper shaker. Emma helped cut Lily's pasta, and Vincent noticed she also cut Marco's without being asked, recognizing that he still struggled with the knife despite his protests that he was old enough. After dinner, they settled in the living room while the children played. Emma curled into the corner of the couch, and Vincent sat nearby, closer than strictly necessary, but not quite touching. "This is nice," Emma said quietly, watching Lily teach Sophia an elaborate clapping game. "Feels like a real family dinner." "It does," Vincent agreed. Then, before he could stop himself, "I miss this, the normalcy. Just being regular people having a regular evening." Emma turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "You know I know, right? About your work. About what you do." Vincent's entire body tensed. They'd been dancing around this topic for weeks, both pretending they could maintain the fiction that he was just a regular businessman. What do you think you know? Enough. Emma's voice was gentle, not accusatory. Brooklyn's not that big, Vincent. People talk. I've heard the stories, the rumors. I know you're not exactly running a legitimate import-export business despite what you might tell the IRS. Vincent stood abruptly, moving to the window, his jaw tight. And yet you keep bringing your daughter around, letting her play with my children. Why? Because what you do for a living doesn't define who you are as a father. Emma stood too, approaching him carefully. I see how you are with Sophia and Marco. The patience, the love, the way you're trying so hard to give them what they need despite your own grief. That's who you are to me. Not the rumors, not the reputation. Just Vincent, the man who tips generously and shows up consistently and makes my daughter laugh. You should be afraid of me, Vincent said, his voice rough. Most people are. Should I be? Emma challenged, standing close enough now that he could smell her shampoo. Something floral and simple. Have you ever given me a reason to fear you? Been anything but kind and respectful? You don't understand the world I operate in. The dangers? Getting close to me puts you at risk. Then maybe you should change your world. The words were soft, but firm. For your children, if not for yourself. They deserve a father who comes home safely every night, who doesn't live with the constant threat of violence or arrest hanging over him. Vincent turned to face her fully, and the concern in her eyes nearly undid him. It's not that simple. You don't just walk away from this life. There are obligations, debts, people who depend on me. And what about the people who depend on you right here? Emma gestured toward the living room where the children played. Sophia and Marco, who've already lost one parent. They need you alive and present, not constantly looking over your shoulder. The truth of her words hit Vincent like a physical blow. Since Maria's death, he'd been operating on autopilot, managing his business because that's what he did, maintaining control because he didn't know how else to be. But Emma was right. His children had already lost so much. What happened if they lost him too? I don't know how to be anything else, he admitted, the confession scraping out of him. Emma's hand found his face, cupping his jaw with surprising tenderness. Then learn. People change, Vincent. Especially when they have good reasons to. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Vincent was acutely aware of how close she stood, of the warmth of her palm against his skin, of the way her eyes searched his face with concern and something else, something that looked like hope. He wanted to kiss her. The urge was sudden and overwhelming, catching him completely off guard. It had been so long since he'd felt that kind of desire, that pull toward another person. With Maria, it had been different, a love that had grown over years, comfortable and familiar. This thing with Emma was new, uncertain, terrifying in its intensity. But before he could act on the impulse, Lily's voice called from the living room. Mama, can we watch a movie? The spell broke. Emma stepped back, her hand falling away, leaving Vincent's skin cold where she'd touched him. Sure, baby, Emma called back, her voice slightly unsteady. Let's see what they have. They settled the children in front of an animated film, and Vincent excused himself, needing a moment to collect his thoughts. In the quiet of his bedroom, he stood at the window overlooking the Brooklyn streets, his mind racing. Emma was right. He needed to change, not just for himself, but for his children. They deserved better than a father who might not come home one night, better than growing up in the shadow of his reputation and the dangers it brought. But more than that, and this was the thought that both thrilled and terrified him, he wanted to be someone worthy of Emma Carter, this good, kind woman who saw past his reputation to the person underneath, who challenged him to be better, who made him feel things he'd thought died with Maria. He pulled out his phone and called Tony. Boss? Tony answered immediately, always on call. I need you to set up a meeting with our lawyer, the accountant, everyone involved in the business operations. When? Tomorrow. It's time to make some changes. Big ones. A long pause. Boss, are you sure about this? No, Vincent admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. He ended the call and returned downstairs to find Emma and all 4 children asleep. Emma on one end of the couch, Lily curled against her side, Sophia and Marco sprawled on the floor with pillows, the movie's credits rolling unwatched. Vincent stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, this collection of people who'd somehow become important to him, who'd reminded him what it felt like to hope for something beyond mere survival. He carefully scooped up Marco, then Sophia, carrying them one at a time to their beds. When he returned, Emma was stirring, blinking sleepily. Sorry, I fell asleep, she murmured, her hair mussed, looking younger and more vulnerable than usual. It's fine. I carried the twins to bed. Should I wake Lily? No, I'll get her. Emma gently lifted her daughter, and Vincent walked them to the door, helping Emma with her coat one-handed while she held the sleeping child. At the threshold, Emma paused. Vincent, what you said earlier about not knowing how to be anything else. I meant what I said. People can change, if they want to badly enough. I know. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture more intimate than he'd intended. Emma, He stopped, unsure how to articulate what he was feeling. Thank you. For seeing me. The real me. She smiled, soft and genuine. That's easy to do. You're a good man, Vincent Romano, even if you don't always believe it yourself. She left, disappearing into the February night with Lily asleep against her shoulder, and Vincent stood in the doorway long after they'd gone, her words echoing in his mind. You're a good man. Was he? Could he be? He wanted to try. For his children. For Emma. For himself. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of meetings and difficult conversations. Vincent began the complex process of legitimizing his business operations, separating the legal ventures from the illegal ones, setting up trusts and corporations, cooperating carefully with federal authorities in exchange for immunity and a clean start. It was dangerous work. Some of his associates supported the transition, understanding that the old ways were becoming increasingly risky. Others saw it as betrayal, as weakness. There were threats, tense negotiations, moments when Vincent wondered if he'd made a catastrophic mistake. But through it all, Emma was there, not involved in the details, but present in his life, providing stability and normalcy. Their Sunday playdates continued, and Vincent started coming to the diner less frequently as business demands intensified. But they texted daily, short messages that kept them connected. How are the twins today? Emma would ask. Sophia lost another tooth. Marco aced his spelling test, Vincent would reply. Lily wants to know if Sophia can come to her birthday party next month. She'd love that. Simple exchanges, but they mattered. They reminded Vincent why he was doing this, what he was fighting for. Tony remained skeptical but loyal, helping manage the transition even as he questioned Vincent's motivations. This is because of her, isn't it? The waitress. Her name is Emma, Vincent corrected. And yes, partly. But mostly it's because I want my children to grow up without the weight of my choices crushing them. That's fair, Tony admitted. Just hope she's worth the risk, boss, because you're making a lot of enemies with this transition. Vincent thought about Emma's smile, her kindness, the way she'd held his children while they cried. She is. Valentine's Day fell on a Sunday that year. Vincent had been planning something special for weeks, coordinating with Mrs. Chen and even recruiting the twins to help. He'd invited Emma to dinner at his home, just the two of them, with the children having a supervised playdate at Mrs. Chen's sister's house. When Emma arrived, the house was transformed. Candles everywhere. On the mantel, the dining table, the windowsills, casting warm, flickering light through the rooms. Vincent had cooked. Actually cooked, not just heated something up, following recipes and video tutorials until he'd managed something approaching restaurant quality. Emma stood in the doorway, taking it all in, her expression unreadable. Is this too much? Vincent asked, suddenly uncertain. I can turn off some of the candles if it's perfect, Emma interrupted, her voice soft with wonder. Vincent, this is beautiful. They ate dinner at the dining table, the same one where Vincent had shared countless meals with Maria. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like moving forward, like honoring the past while embracing the future. Over pasta and wine, they talked, really talked, about everything they'd carefully avoided discussing before. Vincent told her about the business changes, the risks he was taking, his hopes for a legitimate future. Emma shared her fears about raising Lily alone, her dreams of eventually going back to school, her gratitude for his presence in their lives. I never expected this, Emma said, swirling wine in her glass. When I approached your table that Christmas Eve, I just saw a father struggling with his kids. I never imagined it would lead to this. This? Vincent prompted, his heart suddenly racing. Friendship, connection, whatever this is between us. Emma met his eyes across the candlelight. You've become important to me, Vincent, to both Lily and me, and that terrifies me because I swore after her father left that I wouldn't let anyone close enough to hurt us again. Vincent reached across the table, taking her hand. I would never. I know, Emma said quickly. That's not what scares me. What scares me is how much I care about you, how much I want this, us, to be something real. Because if it falls apart, it won't just hurt me. It'll hurt the kids, too. All four of them have gotten attached. Vincent stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair, a position of vulnerability that would have been unthinkable months ago. Emma, I can't promise everything will be perfect. I'm still figuring out how to navigate this new life, how to be the person my children need, how to deal with my past while building a future. But I can promise I'll show up. I'll be honest. I'll protect you and Lily with everything I have. And I'll try. God, I'll try so hard to be worthy of what you're offering me. Emma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. What am I offering you? A second chance, Vincent said simply. At happiness. At family. At being more than the reputation I've carried for so long. He paused, his throat tight with emotion. Emma Carter, you walked into my life on the worst night I'd had since my wife died, and you changed everything. You saw my children when they were falling apart, and you helped them, helped us, put the pieces back together. You've made me believe that maybe, just maybe, we can survive this grief, that there's something beyond it worth living for. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. Vincent, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, he continued. We can take this as slow as you need, but I need you to know I have feelings for you. Real feelings. The kind that terrify me because I thought I'd never feel them again after Maria died. Emma cupped his face with both hands, her touch gentle but certain. I have feelings for you too. I've been trying to deny them, trying to convince myself this was just friendship or convenience or gratitude. But it's more than that, isn't it? Yes, Vincent breathed. It's so much more. She leaned down and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Vincent's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. It was nothing like kissing Maria had been. This was new territory, unfamiliar and thrilling, tinged with uncertainty, but also with hope. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Emma laughed, slightly breathless, slightly hysterical. Okay, so we're doing this. We're actually doing this. If you'll have me, Vincent said. Complicated past, uncertain future, and all. I don't want perfect, Emma said firmly. Perfect is boring and probably impossible anyway. I want real. I want honest. I want someone who shows up and tries and doesn't run when things get hard. I can do that, Vincent promised. I will do that. They moved to the living room, sitting close on the couch. Emma tucked against Vincent's side with a naturalness that suggested they'd been doing this for years rather than minutes. They talked for hours, about their fears, their hopes, their children, the future they might build together. We'll take it slow, Emma said. For the kids' sake. They've all been through so much loss and upheaval. We need to make sure this is stable before we present it as something permanent. Agreed, Vincent said, though his arms tightened around her slightly, already reluctant to let go. And you need to promise me something, Emma continued, pulling back to look him in the eye. No secrets about the business. I know you're working to go legitimate, but if there's danger, if something threatens our children, I need to know. No protecting me by keeping me in the dark. It went against every instinct Vincent had. His entire life had been built on compartmentalization, on keeping the people he loved separate from the dangers of his work. But Emma deserved honesty, deserved to make informed decisions about the risks she was taking. No secrets, he promised. I'll tell you everything you need to know. Emma smiled and kissed him again, softer this time, a seal on their agreement. Later, when Vincent walked her to her door, they'd taken a cab to her modest apartment in Sunset Park. Emma paused on the threshold. Thank you for tonight, she said, for the candles and the dinner and the honesty, for seeing me as more than just the waitress from the diner. Thank you for seeing me as more than my reputation, Vincent countered, for giving me a reason to be better. One more kiss, gentle and full of promise, and then Emma slipped inside, leaving Vincent standing in the hallway with a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. He pulled out his phone to text Tony. Meeting tomorrow. Need to accelerate the transition timeline. I want to be fully legitimate within 6 months. Tony's response came quickly. Boss, that's aggressive. Might not be possible. Make it possible, Vincent typed back. I've got reasons to get this done. Good reasons. He could almost hear Tony's sigh through the phone. Understood. We'll figure it out. As Vincent rode home through the Brooklyn night, the streets quiet except for the occasional passing car, he thought about the journey he'd been on since that Christmas Eve. From broken widower barely holding his family together, to a man who'd found unexpected connection with a waitress and her daughter, to someone willing to completely upend his life for the possibility of something better. It was terrifying, risky, potentially catastrophic if things went wrong. But as Vincent let himself into his brownstone and climbed the stairs to check on his sleeping children, he knew with absolute certainty that it was worth it. Sophia and Marco slept peacefully, their faces relaxed and content in ways they hadn't been for months. On Sophia's nightstand was a framed photo, one Vincent had taken the previous Sunday at the park. All 4 children, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. Behind them, slightly blurred but visible, Emma and Vincent stood close together, not quite touching but obviously together in some fundamental way. It looked like a family, not the family Vincent had lost, not a replacement for what he and Maria had built, but something new, something with its own value and meaning. Vincent kissed both twins' foreheads, whispered goodnight to their dreams, and retreated to his own room. He fell asleep with Emma's last text glowing on his phone. "Sweet dreams, Vincent. Thank you for taking a chance on us." "Thank you," he'd replied, "for giving me something to take a chance on." The future was uncertain. The path ahead was complicated and potentially dangerous. But for the first time since Maria's death, Vincent Romano was looking forward rather than backward. He was building something rather than just surviving. He was allowing himself to hope, to feel, to risk his heart on the possibility of love. And in the candlelight of that Valentine's evening, with Emma's taste still on his lips and her words still echoing in his mind, Vincent had made a choice. He chose to try, to change, to be the man his children needed and the partner Emma deserved. He chose hope over fear, possibility over safety, connection over isolation. He chose to live again. And that, Vincent thought as sleep finally claimed him, was the greatest gift anyone could have given him. The reminder that even in the depths of grief, even in the midst of complicated circumstances, the human heart was capable of healing. It just needed the right person to help light the way.